Some centuries ago, the idea of humans exploring space or even setting foot on celestial bodies would have been thought impossible. However, recent technological advancements have made it possible for government bodies like NASA and others not only to explore space, but even set foot on some celestial bodies. Space exploration is no mean feat, and it takes years of preparation and a lot of money to launch any successful mission. Most times, lives and several millions of dollars are at stake, so it takes the best of the best to represent their countries for such an iconic mission. Considering the caliber of people selected for a space mission, having an incident of crime in space would probably be the last thing on your mind. However, we finally recorded what seems to be the first and the only crime committed in space so far. What would a crime in space look like? You're about to find out in this video. There are laws governing every nation depending on where you find yourself. However, what happens when you find yourself in a place governed by no one? For instance, let's assume you committed a crime in space. You've probably seen in movies where criminals make a run for the border, or the high seas, in an attempt to escape from a crime they've committed. Well, this seems to work, especially on the high seas, because they are outside the territorial waters of any nation. That means that they are not under any law. And without law, there is no crime. But is it really easy to get away from crimes just by making a run for the open seas? That may work in the movies. However, in real life, there is a way that nations can still enforce jurisdiction and bring these criminals to justice. Although these international waters belong to no one, they belong to everyone. Nations came together and agreed on a common law that every ship must be registered before traveling on the international waters. Therefore, your ship must comply with all the laws of the country that it was registered in. For instance, if your ship was registered in Panama, you must comply with all the laws in that country. By the way, some people take advantage of this and register their ships in countries like Panama, Liberia, and Marshall Island to reduce their cost of labor and pay lesser taxes. Before we continue, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to this channel for more interesting videos. Now, let's quickly talk about the first crime in space. Anne McClain is a former US Air Force combat pilot with over 800 flight hours in combat, and she's also the first person to commit a crime in space. She was on a 6-month mission aboard the International Space Station between December 2018 and June 2019. On one of those days, she probably didn't have much work to do, so she decided to log in to her estranged partner's bank account. Little did she know that this act would make her become the first person to commit a crime in space. Back on Earth, her partner, Summer Worden, had noticed that someone else had accessed her account, so she asked the bank to find out the location of the last login. Unfortunately, it was traced back to a computer registered to NASA. Without thinking twice, she already knew who the culprit was, and was ready to take the case to any length until justice or revenge was served. Worden filed a complaint of identity theft against McClain through the Federal Trade Commission. She accused her of going through details of her financial transactions without authorization. This shouldn't have been a big deal, but considering the fact that these two were in the middle of a terrible divorce, Worden might be able to defend her claims. These two started having misunderstandings in 2018, when McClain wanted a shared parenting right of Worden's child. However, Worden didn't like this idea and she refused even though the two were married. This resulted in a series of dramas, such as McClain going to the court claiming that Worden had an explosive temper and poor financial management skills just to have a legal relationship with the child. Later in that same year, Worden could not take it anymore, so she filed for a divorce. Although this seems like a simple case, things like this could easily get complicated. McClain was not on Earth when she allegedly committed the crime, so this brings the question of jurisdiction. Since space, just like the territorial waters, does not belong to anyone, under what law would she be tried? Well, let's just say that space is seen the same way as international waters. Since no one owns space, no country can lay claim to it or even enact a law that everyone must follow. However, just like the international waters, space doesn't belong to anyone, but that doesn't mean that anything goes. For instance, Article 8 of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty states, quote, "A state party to the treaty on whose registry an object launched into outer space is carried shall retain jurisdiction and control over such object and over any personnel thereof, while in outer space or on a celestial body." End quote. In other words, if you commit a crime in Russia's spacecraft, Russia would have the legal jurisdiction to investigate you and even punish you according to the provision of their law. That means that no matter how far you are in space, you're never above the law. However, McClain's case was different as she was an astronaut aboard the ISS, which is governed by international law. The ISS is not owned by one nation, so the Outer Space Treaty may not work in this case. Although no one was expecting a crime in space or even in the ISS, the law didn't ignore the possibility. In 1998, the nations involved in the ISS signed a treaty called Intergovernmental Agreement, or IGA guideline. Any culprit would be sent back to their nation for trial, and the law that exists on Earth for the individual nations shall be applied even if the crime was carried out in outer space. This case did not last for long, as McClain was able to defend herself. She didn't deny the fact that she accessed the account, but she claimed that she only did that to make sure the family finances were in order. This is something that she has done several times before now. She didn't carry out any financial transactions, so this made it easy for her to prove her innocence. But the claim of Worden was later discarded, as the evidence was not strong enough to prove McClain guilty. Her case may be over, but this is a great reminder of what humans can do. People are now beginning to wonder what would be the consequences of the relentless effort of humans to explore space or even find another home outside Earth. Humans are leaving Earth for space, but that doesn't mean we're going to leave our vices behind here on Earth. Space is a common ground, and everyone is allowed to explore it. In the near future, space exploration would not be exclusively for scientists and experts who know about astronomy and mathematics. Some decades ago, space exploration remained a dream, and most of what we know about our universe is from observations made from Earth. However, we now have satellites in space, and even a habitable space station like the ISS, where people have spent several months in the past 2 decades. Therefore, it is very possible that in the near future, people like you will be privileged to be on the next spaceship to observe what the Earth looks like from space. Another person who is working hard to see humans in space is Elon Musk. He has been working hard to see his desire for humans to colonize Mars come to pass, and it will only be a matter of time before this would be possible. For instance, he said the goal of his company, SpaceX, is to reduce the cost of human spaceflight by a factor of 100. If this is possible, then the dream of seeing more people in space would be sooner than you can imagine. Science has advanced since the first time humans set foot on the moon. There are more accurate and precise methods of finding information about space today. What would happen when people eventually decide to settle on a new planet? Would they follow the laws of their country or create new ones? Who would judge them if they committed a crime? These are all questions that we don't have the answers to just yet. What do you think about humans exploring space? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to get more interesting videos.